They say that once, near the salt-flat marshes of St. Tar, there stood a library with no name, just stone, salt, and silence. It never appeared on maps, and no carriage would stop within 20 leagues of its gate. Yet, every autumn when the marsh mist rose early, and the birds fell silent, a single light could be seen glowing from the second-floor window, flickering, warm, and possibly safe. They say it burned even when the wind howled hard enough to peel paint from the shutters. It was in that forgotten place lived a man called Etienne. The people of the marsh villages remembered him only in fragments. The paperman whispered, the one who files the wind. They said he never ate. He spoke 12 languages, translated dreams into ink. Some believed he was a monk who had broken his vows. Others said he was a cartographer who had gone mad, trying to map a place that didn't exist. But none could say for certain what he did, only that the letters he sent, once a year, to the town hall of St. Tar, shined with a single symbol, a compass pointing south. The truth, however, was more peculiar than the myths. Etienne was an archivist of absence. His task of self-assigned, or so it appeared, was to catalog all things that the world had forgotten. Not just old poems and songs, not just lost cities or erased kings, but memories, stories, people whom time had gently unthreaded from the fabric of history. For 42 years he compiled these vanished echoes into leather-bound folios, sealing each with a blue wax crest shaped like an eyelid close. No one ever visited. No one ever wrote back. Until the letter arrived. He came on the 1st of November, tied in rough twine and sealed not in wax but in dried blood. There was no return address. It's only a single page handwritten in an angular slanting hand. You'll miss one. That night, Etienne did not eat, did not sleep. Walked in circles until the candle burned down, then climbed the spiral stairs to the locked archive chamber. There, beneath a timbered eaves and 100 slumbering folios, he opened a new ledger. On the first page, he wrote, Case 311. The name had disappeared while being spoken. And then something strange happened. His ink would not dry. He waited. 10 minutes, then an hour. He lit a second candle. Still the words shimmered wet, refusing the shadow. It was as if the paper itself rejected the sentence. As if the truth he had written did not wish to be fixed in place. That was the beginning. By dawn, Etienne's hands were trembling. He had tried 20 different parchments, 3 different inks. Every mention of a name, whatever it had been, dissolved. Not smudged, not blurred. Its symbol unhappened. The letters uncurled, rearranged, vanished like breath on glass. But Etienne was not a man to be deterred by impossibility. He began to trace backward, not from the name, but from the silence it left behind. He returned to the black folio, the ledger of erased towns. He flipped to the section marked Apocryphal Settlements. Dozens of entries, each annotated with cross-referenced maps, false census records, local myths, and burial reports. In there, wedged between 2 unnumbered pages, he found it. A field report dated 1782. Page was brittle and darkened with age, but legible. It spoke of a village 6 miles north of Rouen, a place called Quintet-sur-Rouen. Church bell rang backwards every midnight during Lent. These townspeople never cast shadows in photographs. There were no coordinates, no parish records, no registry of roads, but in the margins, scrawled hastily at the end read, all roads in, unremembered by dawn. Found the end. No guess. Only books with names scratched out. Children with blank eyes. Burned everything. So feel it in my breath. There was no signature. Only a single compass symbol, pointing east. Etienne closed the folio. Outside, the mist had begun to seep under the door. And from somewhere deeper than the marsh, a bell tolled long and low. It was not midnight. It was not Lent. Yet in his bones, Etienne felt it. Something he remembered itself and began to walk. Etienne began his journey on the 8th day after the letter. He brought little, 3 leather-bound journals, a box of ink, a 1729 French military map, and a scratched silver magnifying lens. But what slowed him wasn't the weather. It was memory. Since opening file 311, his recollection had begun to betray him. Familiar roads now twisted like dreaming snakes. A weathered sign that once read Rouen was blight as if Mars had swallowed the language itself. At the third bend, Etienne swore there used to be a wooden cottage firelight in the windows, violin music curling into winter fog. Now, only a sunken patch of earth remained, and the smell sharp, metallic, like breath held too long by the dead. He reached the edge of ruin at dusk. The town was unchanged. Gray stone, slanted roofs, shuttered windows. But when Etienne asked about Quintet survey, no one remembered. He pointed to its coordinates on the old map. Grilsha merely blinked and said, "That's marshland. Been there since my great-grandfather's time." Then, a child pulled at his coat. She was 8, perhaps. Eyes like still water. Voice was a whisper. "You're looking for the place with daytime bells, aren't you?" Etienne froze. The girl smiled, not like a child, but like someone who had already been forgotten once before. She handed him a crumpled slip of paper, single word in purple ink. Writing beneath it, "When the moon loses its shadow, walk straight." Then, she vanished into the alley. That night, Etienne camped at the forest's edge. The moon was a dull crescent, but at exactly 2:13 a.m., its light disappeared. No clouds, no wind. Just sun, absolute darkness, like someone had erased a line from the sky script. He rose, lit his oil lamp, and began to walk. No trail, no signs. Yet his fate moved as if following a map etched in sleep. 3 hours later, he stood before a rotting wooden gate. No fence, no house, just the gate, alone in the trees. Beyond it, the village, drowned in fog, silent, unlit. He stepped through. The world changed, not in sight but in sound. No insects, no wind. His footsteps echoing too closely, as though someone walked beside him but never breathed. He didn't turn around. Some places punish the curious. The homes were narrow, 2 stories, windows ajar, empty. Then he saw the sign. One word, Quintet below it, scrawled in chalk. "We are still dissolving." Etienne opened his journal. For the first time in days, the ink held. Reality had permitted him to record again. But somewhere in the fog, a bell tolled. 7 chimes. Deep and wrong. Time period did not pass forward nor back. It circled. There were no clocks in Quintet surveying, no calendars, no wishers, no bells hung from towers. Yet the ringing continued. Always 7 tones. Always from nowhere. Yen wandered its alleys for what may have been minutes or years. The sun never rose, but the fog never lifted. In the village whispered back, not in words, but in the quiet. He began noticing doors that weren't there before, in windows that blinked. One night, or what he assumed was night, he found a chapel. Not by design. He simply turned, and it was there, built of basalt, stained with time. Its roof was cracked open to the sky like a rotted tooth. Inside, pews fetched nothing. No altar, no cross, only a painting, huge oval, framed in tarnished silver. It depicted a man in cardinal robes, seated, hands folded. But where his mouth should be, there was only raw red skin and open wound shaped like a grin. His eyes were blank. Not blind, blank. As if a soul behind them had burned out centuries ago. Beneath the portrait, a plaque. He speaks when the forgetting begins. Etienne staggered back. The fog inside the chapel thickened, and from its center, a voice emerged not from the air, but from Etienne's own throat. "I've forgotten your name already. That's why you're here." His own voice. But not him. He ran. In his journal at night he will. "This place remembers only the lost. The moment you are remembered by the world, it spits you out. But if no one remembers you, if your name is erased, Quintet holds you forever." The paper shook in his hands. Not from fear. From cold. It was seeping in now under his nails into his ears. The kind of cold that forgets the shape of warmth. Well, he found an attic to hide in. There. In the rafters, he saw symbols carved into the beams, familiar ones. The same mission file 311. He realized then. Others had been here. The file wasn't a warning. It was a return ticket, kind that had been here before. He closed his eyes, remembered the gate. Not from days ago, but from a life ago. Etienne dreamed of mirrors. In one, he was a child clutching a violet ribbon. In another, a faceless man whispered syllables that cracked like glass. Each dream bled into the next. Each memory began to feel secondhand. When he woke, if one could call it that, he no longer remembered the road to Saint-Tar. Only the way back to the gate. This time the gate had changed. Its wooden slats bore fresh carvings names, dozens of them etched in haste. Not from pride, but desperation. People had tried to resist the village's pull by inscribing their identities, yet even those names were warped. Marseduber, Hawinovi. Bits missing, like paper eaten by fire. Zhou's name was now missing from his journal. Just as much where Etienne Bellamy had once stood. The chapel was waiting again. This time inside, the painting had changed. The man with the red mouth had turned his head, just slightly, enough that the blank eyes now met his. A single word was painted onto the canvas's lower edge. Replace. Tian fell to his knees. That word unlocked something he hadn't dared admit. This place did not fade on the forgotten. It harvested replacements. For what had been removed elsewhere, somewhere someone had died in silence. And Quintet needed balance. And those who carried memory, archivists, historians, custodians of truth, were perfect to plug the gaps. They didn't vanish, they were traded. Etienne staggered out of the chapel. The fog now moved with purpose, pressing against his skin-like hands. He ran not away, but toward the only place he hadn't dared enter before. The bell tower. Or rather, the absence of it. There was no bell tower in Quintet's surveying, but there was always a sound. He followed it. Through a cemetery with no graves, past houses with windows painted shut, until he reached the hill. At its center stood a frame, a scaffold of iron with no bell. But the sound emanated from within it every 7 minutes. The source, a single human tooth, suspended midair. It vibrated, paused. Each time it went, Etienne lost something. The smell of parchment, the shape of his childhood home, the echo of his mother's voice saying his name. The tooth wasn't a relic. It was a beacon, calling erasure. And when he stepped closer, he saw dozens, no hundreds of other teeth embedded into the soil, each one engraved with initials. He recognized one. E.B. He tried to scream, but his voice made no sound. The bell was tolling again. He opened his journal. So blank. He looked at his hands. Wrong color, wrong scars. He touched his face and did not recognize it. He whispered, "Who was I?" A wind answered, gentle and cool. "You are the memory we needed." As he fell to his knees, a figure stepped through the gate. A young woman with a satchel full of papers, blinking at the fog. She held a file. Its number, 311. And then the bell tolled again, 7 chimes, long and hollow. World outside, a page yellowed and vanished from a library's archive. In Saint-Tar, a locked drawer clanged open, somewhere far from fog and forgetting. A newborn took its fresh breath, and somewhere deep within, remembered a name he had never been told. Etienne, but no one would ever say it, not aloud, not again.